changed forever. What changes your life and makes you have a 360-degree turnaround, or 180-degree, whatever it is, makes you think about life completely differently? Well, it's usually some sort of spiritually transformative experience or a near-death experience. And today we're going to talk about that we're going to change it up a bit with the wonderful Shaun Lether and Kristin Mismash, who's going to kind of take the reins today and be the host of ATP Media on the United Public Radio Network. It's going to be a great show. Stay tuned.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. We are on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM syndicated radio all over the world, and streaming on about 8 platforms: Facebook, YouTube. We're on Twitch today, Rumble and Odyssey. And as I said in the intro, we're going to change it up a bit today. This is the first cab off the rank for ATP Media, for a live show, ATP Media this year. And Kristin Mismash, who you all know, who joins me on Elevate. Hello, Kristin. You have to talk, darling, because we're on radio.
Oh, yeah, I know. I was unmuting my mic.
Oh, I'm unmuting. I see Hello. That you're still... is going to take the reins today. This is her first conversation or interview debut. She's been telling me for years she wants to start her own podcast show. Hasn't done it yet. So I'm like, okay, well, why don't you come on my show and, give it a go and see. So she's got a friend online, somebody I met in 2018. I contacted Shaun way back when, and he was going to come on the show, and I think you were sick, Shaun, weren't you? And you didn't end up coming, and then we sort of danced around each other for 8 years. And here you are, finally on the show. Welcome, Shaun.
My pleasure. Yes. Back when we had talked about doing it, I was still in and out of the hospital and having all kinds of issues, and so it felt awful. But then I met Kristin at the IONS conference in DC, right, Kristin?
Yeah.
And we just immediately connected and have a lot in common. And so every time we would chat on the phone, I'm like, and she mentioned you, Karen, that I was like, I need to do that. I feel so terrible because that was literally like the first podcast I promised to do. And so it's fun that we get to do it now, and we get to do it with Kristin co-hosting together. Her first time. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, co-hosting, I'm kind of going to step back and let her take the reins. So she's the host today. Mind you, you know me, I like to yak, and I always have a million questions. So I'll have trouble keeping my mouth shut, but I probably will jump in with a few questions. I just want to acknowledge the luscious ladies online. There's Alison, San, Diane, hey, Heidi, Shirley from Canada, and all saying hi to each other. And
there's Diane, yeah.
So hello, luscious ladies online. I'm sure there'll be a couple of fellas that join us as well, but at the moment it's the luscious ladies.
Is
online.
Sun Dragon though? Z Sun Dragon. This one.
I don't know. Are you a I think she's a girl. I'm not sure. I might be wrong. She might not be.
Hello, them, and I don't mind.
Crystal, there's Crystal, Faith. Excited to watch y'all. Love that. Enjoy Shaun Lether. Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah, so in saying that, and remember, if you're listening on any platform, to like and subscribe and leave a comment after the show. Tell us what you think. The more comments you leave after the show, like even on the live stream, but when it's finished live streaming, the more the algorithms love you and show it to other people. The more people engage in the content, the more the algorithms say, people are interested in this, I'll show it to more people. So that would be great. But I am going to step out and let Kristin do her thing. And I'll step back in a bit later. I'll see you later.
Okay. Well, and at least you're there as backup just in case something goes horribly wrong. Because we don't know. All in flow. So I am so excited to have Shaun on here. And thank you so much, Shaun, for doing this. My first time having an interview in this type of format. Although you and I seem to chat and we can go on for hours.
Yes.
It's great. I'll go ahead and I'll read your bio and let everybody kind of know a little bit of the background, and then we can get into all the nitty-gritty details. So with Shaun, through a series of spiritually transformative experiences, STEs or near-death experiences, NDEs, and their powerful after effects, Shaun Lether woke up to his true spiritual nature and discovered his life purpose. That purpose did not revolve around his previous successes in academics and in business. Rather, his soul's purpose centered around mind, body, and spirit healing and being of service to others. Shaun is the founder and leader of Hawaiian IANS, which is the International Association for Near-Death Studies. That's what we were talking about earlier, and leads near-death and STE sharing groups with many spiritual organizations. He also runs several NDE, SDE, and Life After Death Facebook groups with a combined membership of over 1 million. Apparently I'm dyslexic today. But, I mean, that's actually one of the reasons why I reached out to you, Shaun, to instruct me on how you do that. You're just the big connector, getting people together, and you have so much to share. So I'm excited to hear all about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's also fun that you and I have this connection, Utah. Except
yes.
I got out of there as soon as I could. You're still there.
Yeah, well, and I didn't grow up here, and I guess you and I traded places.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place. But I prefer Hawaii.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I bet a lot of people would prefer Hawaii. So,
yeah.
But you yourself, and we were talking a little before the show, you've had several incredible experiences, spiritually transformative ones, as well as actual near-death experiences. And let's get started with the one that you feel really shaped everything.
Yeah, so I'll give a quick run through, little background, very short. I was born in Salt Lake City. I was born to a family of Mormons, but we were kind of like Jack Mormons. And for people that don't know what that means Mormons that don't necessarily follow all of the rules, especially the Word of Wisdom rules. But we did our best, and it was a classic dysfunctional family. And my mom had an NDE in 1975, except, of course, back then, Raymond Moody's book just came out. So nobody in Utah knew what that was. And she went to a lot of mental institutions, and she never wanted to be here. Like many near-death experiencers that are not happy to be here, my mom was one of those. So there was a lot of struggle and trauma growing up. But now I wouldn't trade it for for anything, because it's helped me. The lessons have been amazing. So yeah, basically I had an NDE when I was 6 months old, really quickly, and I had a knowing that I don't remember the actual near-death experience because I was 6 months old, but I know that I had a knowing after that that things were coming through me that I knew was not me. And I had this connection, and the spiritual connection. And then growing up in the church, I found that I had this deep connection myself. And so sometimes I had conflict because of, not understanding why we need a prophet or somebody else to be an intermediary with God. So anyway, I grew up there. I had a great life. As far as if material, the world goes and all that kind of stuff. But I did have a lot of spiritual dissonance. So anyway, at some point I moved to California and I did all the things that the world says we should do to be successful. I went and I got multiple degrees, graduate with honors, and I started several successful companies and started buying real estate and just had everything back then that the world, at least the world I was listening to, says that we want to succeed. So come 2003, I thought I had everything I wanted. I had several houses in Palm Springs and a beautiful condo in Los Angeles and a house in Big Bear Lake. And we were having Christmas in Big Bear Lake. And I just put in all new Viking appliances, and I love Christmas. Christmas to me is like the best holiday. And it's the best when you have family around, and it's even better when you have snow. So we were at my house in Big Bear. I just put in all these new Viking appliances. It was amazing, beautiful. It snowed. I had all my family coming, and I had this really cool Hummer, if you guys know what they are, the big Army vehicles. And I just put in satellite radio, and it snowed. And so I got in the car and I went and I was driving around the lake because it was like a picture postcard Christmas. And I created that, because back then I was this big manifester. But as I'm driving around the lake and I turned on Cher, the song Believe by Cher, which was my favorite song at the time. And as I'm driving around the lake, listening to Cher, looking on everything I have and Christmas, I realized I wasn't happy. So at some point, I basically said the magic words, "Is this all there is?" So cut to a few months later, I'm now going to buy some property in Hawaii. And I flew to Hawaii. And so in California, I did everything. I had a landscaping business. I did real estate. I also did acting and modeling. Back then I had this perfect body. I did like Gold's Gym ads. And so I'd given myself an abdominal hernia, which actually I didn't know how dangerous they are. It just looks like another ab. So, rather than a 6-pack, I had a 7-pack. I had the extra, but it was a hernia. And so as we're on the plane, the minute the plane takes off, the hernia strangulates, and I was miserable. I ran back to the bathroom. I was like dying. Like I didn't know what was happening, but I knew that I was dying. And so flew all the way to Honolulu. And then when we got to Honolulu, we stayed there a couple of days, went to the Big Island. And back then I was only into holistic stuff. And so finally, after 4 days, most people die within 24 to 48 hours. After 4 days, I went to a naturopathic doctor who should have known, because my chest was turning black and blue, that there's something wrong. But what she did didn't really help. So the next day I went to the ER. They knew right away what was wrong. So they immediately started hauling me into the operating room. And the doctor said, "We don't know what we're going to find. We're going to do our best." So as we're going back into the operating room, all of it, I started losing consciousness. And here in this experience, I had what some people would call like the void. It was like a dark NDE. It wasn't like scary or anything, but it was like the void. And in this experience, I saw the light. And what's funny is I didn't know anything about NDEs or any of this stuff, but I knew, don't go to the light because I'm not ready to die. I have way too much to do. And I had a guide there, because nobody dies alone, in spite of what some people think. There's always somebody with us. And so one of my guides was there. And I remember saying, it's like, no, I won't accept my death here. And then I'll become basically a ghost here in this Hilo hospital, this jungle hospital on the island of Hawaii, and nobody's ever going to find me. And so I bargained, like literally, do not let me go. Before I knew it, whether I, as much as I wanted to fight it, I did go to the light. And I had, an experience there, amazing love and all of that. But I still refer to this experience as NDE light, because this was the experience that basically was the precursor to the next 15, 20 years of spiritual experiences and ego death. And so when I woke up the next day after the surgery, they had to keep my stomach open because they cut out like 7 feet of dead necrotic intestines. And so the doctor said, you can't leave, you can't go anywhere for 6 months. And I was like, did not want to stay. I was like, trying to find a cruise ship, whatever I could do to get back to California. So anyway, they're like, no, you have to stay. So I said, okay, if I have to stay here, I want to recover by a waterfall. Well, sure enough, because I was a great manifester back then, Homes and Land magazine, it shows this amazing 8-acre property with 3 houses and private waterfall, ocean view, like the most amazing place that you could imagine. Something that I never, I didn't know anybody that owned something like that, and I didn't ever anticipate that I would have something like that. So anyway, got out of the hospital, I rented it, and then made a deal with the lady to buy it. I never went back to California. I sold everything online. And so I stayed there. And as I was staying there, I started having more and more spiritual experiences. Spiritual experiences with, in Hawaii, they call a god an amakua. And so like a personal god, and it also can be an animal, can be an amakua. And so for me, it was a pueo. And the pueo is an owl. And many of you know the different spiritual beliefs behind owls, pueos. And so I didn't know that at the time. All I knew is that there was this dark foreboding, like something's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel it. And every time I saw these pueos, I would feel that. And then I was in the shower, and the voice, I'd heard this voice before a few times. The voice said, get ready, you're going to lose it all. And I trusted the voice. I knew what it was saying, but I didn't know how to get ready. What it meant is get ready spiritually, get your spiritual tools in order to withstand what's going to happen. Because what then happened is I had amazing highs. I had Steven Spielberg and the people from Indiana Jones. They came and they rented my property, and I had Kate Blanchett and Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford and all these people on my property. And it was amazing, but I knew that I was going to be losing this property. So of course I was trying to get them all to buy it and everything. But so from then on, everything just started unraveling. Anything bad that could happen was happening. The financial collapse happened in 2008, 2009. Everybody started losing everything. I had moved all my real estate there. I had tons of property in Hawaii. And of course, I'm also on the island with the most active volcano in the world, Kilauea. And so things were just crashing down one by one. Kristin, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had to unmute myself, but I mean, let's just get up to speed here. So you have this light NDE, as in like not major, NDE light, and you do end up there for a time, and you decided to settle there. Like how long Were you there when you started to have all these spiritual experiences and you sold everything? Was it about a 2-year period before they came and you had that message come?
Yeah. So yeah, I call it. So the reason I call it an NDE light, it not like to invalidate the experience,
Right.
but the way that I categorize NDEs
Yeah.
is how much of an effect have they had? What's the after effect? Because there's lots of people that claim to have had NDEs, yet it hasn't changed them. So
Right.
I always look at the after effects. And so for me, I had some amazing after effects, but they weren't like what happened later in 2018. So that's
Right.
why I call it an NDE light. It was more like, and that saying, God doesn't give us more than we can handle.
Right.
It kind of fits. So yeah. So literally, yes, I was having these amazing experiences and getting these amazing properties there and selling my stuff. But at the same time, I'd heard that voice. I knew what it meant. And I should say also that before I'd looked at this property before the hernia strangulated. And I was going down this beautiful, tropical, amazing place, the highways and stuff to this property. It was so beautiful. And I love tropics. I was a landscaper and my mom was a florist. And from a kid, I always knew that I was going to live in this kind of a place. But then I also had this deep foreboding, like that something is going to happen here. And I would feel a little sick to my stomach, and because I didn't know what, but I knew that something major was going to happen. So yes.
So this is what you're talking about now. It's shifting, and it's
Yeah.
coming into this next phase.
Yeah. So basically, what happened for the next several years is everything that you could imagine going wrong did. And whereas I used to manifest properties and buyers and sellers and money, and it was all going away. And I couldn't believe it because I was like, I've never experienced this. Whatever I put my mindset to and was in alignment with always worked out. And now it's the opposite. Nobody's buying my properties. Or if I get these buyers, they don't have any money and they're like scam artists. And so interestingly enough, I learned a lot about prayer during this time because, many of us misuse prayer as asking for stuff. And so back then I was like, let me get a buyer, let me refinance this place, please, versus actually asking for what is in my divine order, what is the best for me. And so I didn't realize any of that. So I went through this big dark night of the soul and eventually started losing all the properties, my relationship, my animals, everything was gone. By 2012, I was pretty close to being destitute and had lost several properties. And I actually walked off that property. And I realized at that point, I'm giving up everything of this material world because nothing that I had believed in the past was I didn't believe in it anymore. All my idols were crashing down. So long story short, at some point I moved over to Oahu and I took one suitcase. I used to have several houses of furniture and all this kind of stuff. And like I said, Hummers, Range Rovers, all that kind of stuff. I left everything. I took one suitcase. I went to Oahu, and which is where I live now. And I was trying to okay, you made all this money before, you can do it again. And what I found is, whereas I could make 30, 40,000 a month easily. Now I couldn't even make $1,500 a month to pay my rent. And I'm like, this is insane. What is going on here? And so, of course, from that experience, I later learned it was because I was like I wasn't listening to spirit, and I was trying to make money again and all that stuff when that wasn't my path. So I was literally like swimming upstream, and nothing was working because I wasn't listening to spirits. And the sad thing is, at the time, is I was getting all the messages, but I wasn't listening. So anyway, in 2015, my mother crossed over. She died, and she immediately started coming to me. And she said, and there was some conflict. I didn't have the money to go to Utah. I didn't know if I wanted to be there. And she said, you don't need to go there. So she told me where to go. She shows me this beautiful garden here in Hawaii, and that I'd never been to. And it's like these big, tall pine trees, and she's sitting on a log. And she said, go here. This is where I'll be. So I didn't know where that place was. But over the next few months with my mother, I kept asking her why she was here. She never told me about that I was going to have this other big NDE. She just kept saying, I'm here to be the mother that I couldn't be when you're alive. And what was amazing is she started showing me her life. If you remember, I told you that there was a lot of dysfunctional stuff, and she had had mental illness because she'd had an NDE. And also, what I didn't mention is she also would get let lower entities into her field, into her body, to take over, demons or whatever you want to call it. So, and I'd always known it, but I'm one of those people that in trauma, I make jokes. And so I would make jokes like, oh, mom's getting ready to spit pea green soup, reference to Exorcist. And anyway, so after she crossed over and she started, teaching me things, showing me things, she told me, she said that all those times that I thought she was possessed, she was right. And she showed me her whole life growing up as a child, and her family, and they're like Dutch, and all this stuff. And when she started showing me her whole life, all of a sudden I had the 360-degree view. And it was like complete forgiveness, because there's nothing to forgive. Now I understand. And this is the same mother that tried to kill me several times, and that there was all kinds of drama. But what was amazing is to start on this healing relationship with my mom, who she did not tell me that I was getting ready to have a huge NDE. She just kept saying she was here to be the mother she couldn't be when she was alive. So, do you have another question?
Yeah, I just, my heart just is going out to you for, everything that you went through with that woman, and the way that you're sharing it. And, because she had a profound effect on your life, and you grew up with a knowing and gifts because you had that NDE so young. So with your mom, and I just want to interject into the story here a little bit with your mom, did you have insight that others in your family didn't have, because you had come in a little different by the time you were 6 months old?
Yeah. And her and I had this huge connection that we've actually had through several lifetimes now. I know.
Wow.
And so what was cool is, okay, you Salt Lake City, but back then, like, she was a master astrologer. She did all the charts by hand, and the Mormon Church threatened to excommunicate her.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so she was like, she's not your normal Mormon mother. Like, so she taught us all this stuff, and she did our charts. And like, anytime we had a friend or whatever, she did their charts, but she would she took me to learn astral projection when I was like 12 years old, and alpha awareness, and taught me how to use a pendulum. And
yes.
All this kind of
So you have these two sides of this mother who, you shared the word mental illness. She had this NDE and this connection and entities. And at the same time, you're having these incredible teachings that a lot of us in the spiritual community now, like, man, I wish I had that when I was a kid. Why do I have to come to it now older? And I mean, how did that frame that for you guys as a family, having those two sides of her? Like, it's just so curious to me.
That was the challenge. Most people didn't trust her because she could switch.
Yeah.
And like, she's literally tried to kill me. I mean, so, but I understand it all now. Like, she had these possessions and stuff. So when she was running around the house trying to kill me, and back then I was in big trauma, and then she'd switch and she'd come back in, she'd come back into my room, and she didn't actually apologize, but you know how people, they try to apologize without saying they're sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't ready for it. But she would say stuff like, we're all responsible for our own feelings, which that was total gaslighting. I didn't know that then.
Right.
But and this is where I've learned two things can be true. Like, she can be very spiritually gifted and connected to the other side and have NDEs, but she can also have all these mental illness issues.
And so now then you had that previously, she passes away, and now you're having this like spiritually transformative experience, or this vision, or she's come to you and from the other side, and now you're sitting in the pine trees up on a mountain, not knowing that, but
not yet. She showed me.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so that's the next part now. Because she showed me, because I was in conflict about not going back to Utah for this memorial. And that's when she showed me this garden, and she said, go there. This is where we'll be, like, for me and her, because we both love plants. So about 8 months later, okay, I'm going to back up just for a quick sec. I was talking about how she showed me the whole picture, which is really important because I've been able to completely forgive her. Like, there's nothing to forgive because I understand and I see. Whereas other people in my family, they don't have that experience, and I have one sister that she's like, Mom's not welcome around me. And it's because they still have that experience with her when she was demonic, or, trying to kill people or herself, and it's interesting because I understand that. So I'm so grateful. So I just want to share that we were having all these healing experiences and continue to.
How beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. Like, I feel so lucky. I really do. So anyway, about 8 months later, a sister of mine came, and we were going to go hiking, and we were drawn to these hiking trails that I'd never been to, she'd never been to. And we go back in this one area, and all of a sudden so we're at these waterfalls, and there's this big banyan tree, and she stopped to like call her husband, and I started getting like vertigo, and it's the best way I can describe it. But what was happening to me is basically my third eye was opening up. I was getting what is like ascension. If you guys know what ascension sickness is like, it was like everything in my body was getting ready to meet her. And as we're going through this valley, I was like, this is so weird that I'm delirious, and I feel like altitude sickness and all this kind of stuff. Yet we're ocean level. So anyways, we started going up this hill towards this park where we're going to hike. So as we're going up this mountain, which is only like 4,000 feet, and I'm used to like 10,000 feet. So, and I don't get altitude sickness. But as we're going up, I'm getting dizzier and dizzier. And so as we get to this park, and we get out of the car, and the minute we get out of the car, I'm so delirious, I do like a face plant and go face down on the ground. And then we go sit on this picnic table, and we're like, just chilling, hanging out. And I start looking around, and I see all these pine trees, very similar to what she had shown me when she showed me where she would be. But I didn't put two and two together. So anyway, we start going for our hike. As we're going for our hike, we're walking along, and my sister is in front of me to the right. I'm behind her to the left. I look over to the left, and there's my mom sitting on the log in the exact place that she had told me she would be about 2 or 3 days after she died, when she said, this is where she'll be. And I immediately like burst into tears. And I told my sister, I'm like, she's here. And my sister's like, who? What are you talking about? Like, and luckily this sister, I had told her that my mom was coming to me, and, she was open to the idea. But so it was amazing. And of course, she couldn't see my mom, but I could see her as clear as could be. And from then, it got even stronger. So my mom's stronger and stronger, coming to me, giving me all these messages, but she would never tell me why she was really here. So this was in late 2015. So in 2017, I started getting other spirits coming to me besides just her, which was really interesting. And just, I was full blown, like opening up, but I didn't understand why. So 2017, I started getting sick. I'd always had pneumonia, asthma, bronchitis, lung issues my whole life. That's why I was at 6 months old. I was in the hospital with, my lungs weren't working, and I spent a lot of my life in the hospital and stuff with different lung diseases. And so I started getting sick in the fall of 2017, and I started getting same thing. And I'd learned to do naturopathic drugs and Chinese medicine and all this other stuff to heal myself. Nothing that I was doing was working, and I was getting worse and worse. And at some point, my oxygen was down in the 40s. I couldn't walk. I finally called my I got a doctor to come pick me up. And they came and they picked me up, and I went, and immediately they didn't know what they could do. So then they called an ambulance, and I went to the hospital, to the emergency room. And as we were in the emergency room, they couldn't figure out what was wrong, but I was getting more and more delirious and leaving my body. So then they moved me to another another room to clean me up and stuff before I was going to go into the ICU. And so when I went into this room, this nurse starts, taking care of me and cleaning me up. And she, at the same time, she starts to say that she wants to thank me for providing her with the opportunity to fulfill one of her purposes, which is to help people cross over when they die. And all of a sudden, and then she turns into this Spanish nun. And my room in downtown Honolulu, all of a sudden, I see this countryside outside the windows, not downtown Honolulu. And somehow I knew it was the Spanish countryside, even though I'd never been to Spain. And it was about 500 years ago. Well, I kept thinking, this lady, what does she do? Number one, I should be thanking her for trying to clean me up. And I can't believe she's thanking me when I should be thanking her. Well, it later turns out that, and this is something to talk about another time, but it was actually Saint Teresa of Avila, if you guys know who that is. And I'm a Mormon, or I was a Mormon. I was raised Mormon, not Catholic. I didn't know anything about the Catholic saints or anything about it. And it was Saint Teresa of Avila. And I've later found out why she was there and our connection. But at that point, I didn't know. So from that point on, then I went in and they're going to give me a tracheotomy or the vent. They put me on the vent. And as they do all that, everything's shutting down to die. My sisters come to say goodbye. And there was something for me that I just kept having this knowing that, number one, I haven't been here. I haven't done everything I came here to do. And then number two, that this is not the end. It can't be the end. And so as I was in the ICU for over a month, but I was on the ventilator for like 2 weeks. And during this time, my mother was there, of course, and my nephew, who had passed over from cystic fibrosis in 2007, he was there, and I had other family members and angels and guides that were there in the room. And but I still didn't know if I was going to get to stay. So many times I would leave my body. I would like follow my sisters, as you could imagine. They couldn't handle seeing their brother dying, and they'd gone to my apartment. They threw everything away because they were that sure I wasn't getting out alive. But when they would leave, I would follow them. Like the one sister, she would go to the coffee cart, call her husband, and so I would follow her, and be with her. And then the other sister, she'd go to the cemetery or the cafeteria, and she would get egg salad. So I'd follow her. Kristin?
So you're going in and out of, you're leaving your body while your body is sitting there in the hospital room on a ventilator, and you're having connections with people who have passed over, and yet, your sisters, I can't imagine. And this went on for about a month. That had to have been so hard on them. And yet you knew you had a knowing that this was not the end yet. That's what you said, right?
Right. And I would say stuff to like my one sister, I was saying something about my mom, and she's like, tell her hi. And I'm like, tell her hi yourself. She's right behind you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And none of your other siblings have gifts like that, or have had visitations, or not that they've shared?
They've started later. So later, I think my experience was meant to help open them up.
Yeah. So let me ask you this too then. So while you're in the ICU and you're on a ventilator and they were coming and going to visit you, were you able to communicate with them during that hospital stay? You said, mom's right here. Tell her hi, tell her yourself.
Yeah, I all I could do was write because I had all these tubes, and I was strapped down, and I had the ventilator, so I couldn't speak. So all I could do was write, and I was on so many drugs and propofol, that's the drug that killed Michael Jackson, and it makes your blood sugar go high, so you're like shaking. So yeah, I would try to write on a pad, and it was all scribbles, but that's all I could do.
Oh my goodness, you really have been through it. So then you got through this somehow. What happens? You're seeing your sisters leave, you're following them around spiritually.
Yeah. So what started to happen, because now I've signed all the documents, like they're not going to keep me on life support forever. Like my one sister lives in Utah. She wants to go back to her husband and her family. My other sister lives in LA. She wants to go back to her family. They're doing the best they can, but if he's not going to make it or whatever, and they were here like 2.5 months. So what started to happen, so here's something that was one of the most interesting things that stayed with me. All of a sudden on the radio, there's this song in the background called Tell Your Heart to Beat Again. It's by Daniel Goki. And in this song, it talks about yesterday's a closing door. You don't live there anymore. Tell your heart to beat again. And it's all about letting go of the past. Everything in the past, let go. This is now your new life and a rebirth. And it was wild because I knew this song was for me. And so I would hear a song occasionally, and people have said, well, is that just something they play in the ICU? And it's like, no, it's not, because it followed me, which I'll tell you about later. But so that song started playing. And then at some point I'd signed all the documents. I'd been on the ventilator for over like 7 or 8, 9 days. And the longer you stay on the ventilator, the more your chances of not getting off of it. So it gets down to the time where it's like, okay, we're going to take him off the ventilator. And it's like sink or swim. Like if he can breathe, great. If he can't, the last option is to try to do a tracheotomy. And then if that doesn't work, there's not much we can do. Before this happens, I want to tell you what it was like to be out of my body and to be up with God and my mom and my nephew, and to be one with them, but also separate. And so I was in and out. It was almost like I could turn my head to the left and I'm in the light with God. I could turn my head to the right and I'm back down. And so anyway, I'm up there and out of my body. And the first thing that I really see is, oh, you poor thing. What have you been thinking about yourself and the world? That I left the story and I realized that everything I thought about myself and the world was wrong. And all these doubts and false beliefs and self-judgments, all of that was wrong. And it was also the first time that I could look down on myself with compassion. You know, I looked down on my body and my body's like, I saw like an infant or like an animal. So like your dog or your cat, and they hurt themselves. So they don't know what they're doing. So you put that, the cone thing on their head so they don't lick their wounds. I saw that and that's kind of was me like, oh, you poor self, you've been hurting yourself and you don't even know how much you've been hurting yourself. And it was literally the first time in my entire life that I had this compassion for myself. And even to this day, whenever I start to get in, if it comes about where I'm like wanting to beat myself up or treat myself not well, I go to that memory and what that was like to have complete compassion and love for myself, which is something I'd never had. And the unconditional love and with my mom and my nephew. And like I told you earlier about that forgiveness, it was even before the NDE. It's like, there's nothing to forgive when you have the 360-degree view, when you really understand and see everything. And so I was having these amazing experiences with them, but I did not want to stay there. Like I knew that I hadn't fulfilled my purpose here. I'd spent most of my life doing all this stuff that doesn't matter, making money and all that kind of stuff. And so I, again, was begging like I did in the first time, please let me stay. So at some point they decide, okay, we're taking him off the life support. He can either sink or swim, breathe or not. We will try a tracheotomy, but if that doesn't work, that's it. And I signed the documents there, that they're not going to do anything else. So as they were getting ready to take me off life support and pull the tube out of me, all of a sudden my nephew, who had died of cystic fibrosis, comes up at the end of the bed, like higher, and he shows me Foghorn Leghorn, if you guys know who that is. That's from the Looney Tunes cartoons, and it's the big rooster from 40s, 50s, that you used to might have watched Saturday mornings on cartoons. So he shows me this rooster, and he's showing me the rooster with a puffed out chest because he's showing me how to breathe. So my nephew's showing me, like, puff up your chest, to breathe. And keep in mind, I'm strapped down to this hospital bed. There, like, I can't do that, but I envisioned it in my eyes. And so as he's puffing up his chest, showing me foghorn leghorn, and they start bringing out the tube. And as the tube starts coming out, he again shows me to puff up my chest. He puffs up his chest, and then he breathed into me from the other side. And as he breathed into me from the other side, all of a sudden I breathed in and I could breathe. And this is the first time I've been able to breathe in like 4 months. And, but I couldn't keep the saturation. So I had to wear a mask for the next oxygen mask for like the next 2 months, I believe. But at that point, it was clear I'm going to be around for now. Maybe just today, but I'm going to be around.
That is so, the imagery, the way that you share that is incredible. Thank you so much for going into those details, that your nephew is the one that comes and is right there by your side, and he literally breathes life back into you. However, what I'm picking up on, Shaun, is that you had a choice. I know this isn't it. Now I see that my focus was in the wrong place, and I was given, and you had a choice, and they, in my eyes, I'm choosing to see that they chose to, all right, well, he's ready to come back. Let's just do this little miracle and teach him how to breathe again, and it's incredible that you had this. It's about choice.
Yeah.
And Karen wanted to say something too.
I'm just loving sitting back and listening to your story, Shaun, because I've heard some of your story on different podcast shows, but I don't seem to remember all this part. I don't remember you talking about your mom. We say mom, the way you did before. That was incredible. And and all the psychic phenomena that you experienced, and being able to, move between worlds so easily like you do. But before we continue, I have to do a station ID break. I just want to say, Kristin, you're doing a fabulous job as host. I'm just loving sitting back and listening to. Isn't she great? But yeah, we're just going to do a bit of an ID.
You're listening to ATP Media, Awakening and Expanding Consciousness with Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM, syndicated radio hitting about 120 countries and streaming on 8 platforms.
And our guest today, Kristin Mismash, is the host and I'm the co-host. I'm just sitting back and enjoying the ride. Well, our guest today is Shaun Lether, who's had some amazing spiritually transformative experiences, near-death experiences. And also Shaun is the operator, what do you call yourself, of IANS in Hawaii, the founder, operator. What do you call yourself, Shaun?
Founder, leader of Hawaiian IANS.
Of Hawaiian IANS. And IANS, of course, stands for International Association for Near-Death Studies. It's an incredible, incredible organization. Kristin's been a big part of it for many years. Shaun and I were talking about Nicole Gruhl before, because she started the one in Sydney and I helped her, and COVID stopped all that happening because we were meeting live every week and having different people share their stories. But it's an incredible organization all over the world. It gets a bit political. Kristin's told me a few things. When people come together and, with ego, 3D, it can get a bit challenging. Any organization, it doesn't have to be IANS, but I guess that we figure, when we're in these spiritual organizations, it's all going to be love and light. But it ain't. I've been in many of them, is it? People still have.
Honestly, that's one of the biggest things that I learned, because growing up in Utah, and the Mormon church was my only, but then after having these experiences here, the first things I was doing was going to Buddhist churches and
Right.
doing mindfulness meditation and doing the Dharma and chanting with Hare Krishnas and experience this amazing love with all these different organizations. But I did see the ego there too.
Well, I've got to tell you a quick story. My ex-husband was a Hare Krishna, and when we were traveling through the States, actually, we were at a retreat center that was not a Hare Krishna center. It was for Yogananda, the Yogananda. Anyway, we bumped into a couple of Hare Krishna devotees, and they shared with us that they were a breakaway sect because his followers actually poisoned him, the guy that brought Hare Krishna to the West. Prabhupada. He had this hierarchical system within the organization, and he wasn't promoting people fast enough, so they poisoned him, they killed him. And I'm like, right, spiritual organizations, yeah. Interesting. But IANS is a great organization.
I say it does beg the question, is the message still pure? And that's what we get to experience with, dealing with human beings in this realm.
Right.
To me is, we have to live practice, like you were sharing,
Practice what we
Shaun,
preach.
the unconditional love that you were taught from the other side, and then forgiveness and what really matters. And I mean, in spiritual organizations and in organizations all over, and within your own family, those egos.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's such a human realm.
I actually loved what you shared, Shaun, when you said that you'd had 2 NDEs, but the first one you just said contacting the light because you didn't actually live what you had learnt until you'd had the second one. Like it took a couple of goes, and so you consider the second one the kind of bigger one or real one.
It changed everything.
Yeah.
The one in 2017-18 changed everything. It literally made me stand up and see my life for what it was and take responsibility. That's something really hard for a lot of people, and I only know that because it was so hard for me. When you actually take responsibility, I created this life, and these experiences that I'm having, I chose these experiences. And the first part, at least for me, and it seems like a lot of people, we're like, well, why would I choose that? Was I trying to punish myself? And we don't understand at first, no, this isn't a punishment. This is the way that you chose to grow and to learn. And so for me, I had to go have all that stuff to realize that I was valuing the value less, and that none of that, all of that stuff, it just kept me tethered to this dream. But I had to have it and then lose it, but really let it go, to make that choice, to realize it didn't mean anything. And most NDEers will tell you that, when you have your life review, none of that stuff goes with you. The cars, the money, what matters is the lives that you have changed, helped, the people that you love, the people that have loved you, whose lives have you made better? And I think that's really something else that is so wonderful and exciting for me is I get to redo my life review. The life review that I had before was like, okay, this is, if you exit now, this is what happened.
And I was thinking when you were sharing that you literally were having you were choosing to have multiple lifetimes in one lifetime. Yeah. I mean, Karen, Shaun, you may not know, it's reminding me of Michael Tamura in a small way, and that he kept, there was another gentleman, and I don't know if you know him, Shaun, he finally chose to stay on the other side after 6 or 7 NDEs in this lifetime. And it's very, what a powerful story to share. And I mean, you've got even more to tell about all of this, right? So here you're getting the breath of life back in.
Yeah, and so well, by the way, how are we doing on time? So I can kind of like gauge.
We've got 30 minutes, I believe, Karen.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, good. So yeah, so after this, so I'll share some things. After it was like, yeah, I'm gonna stay around for a while. That's when more and more angels, not in bodies, angels in bodies, angels that could come into bodies, were meeting everywhere I went. Well, actually, everywhere I was, because they would come to my room and so forth. And it was like I'm in this realm, but I'm in the other realm. And the term that I use, which is something that PMH Outwater had come up with in one of her books, is edge walking, which it's like when you're just like you're walking between both worlds.
And did you just have to shift your view, like you were saying?
Yeah, but at first I couldn't necessarily I mean, so when I was laying in the bed, yes, I could. Like to the left, I'm in the light. To the right, I'm back here. But as I started walking more, and finally, I had to literally learn how to do everything. Learn how to sit up, learn how to breathe. Oh, by the way, for people who don't know what it's like to not breathe, being able to breathe for about the first 2 years. Not every breath, but I could take a breath and I could get high, like this serotonin high on just being able to breathe.
Because your nephew healed you.
Yeah, but it was like people don't know how lucky they are to breathe. Everyone takes it for granted. But when you actually just focus on this one beautiful breath that you're allowed to take, and what that does, and the serotonin and the life force coming through you, it's intoxicating. It's amazing. And so I was having all these kind of experiences like that. And then I'm getting like these downloads, and a friend of mine, she's like, you're like a fire hydrant, like just all this information is coming out of you. So I was trying to heal all this stuff through the Buddhist stuff and the Hare Krishnas, and I also did A Course in Miracles, which was something that I was into before, but in this last NDE, I saw like all of those truths of A Course in Miracles, the forgiveness, the unconditional love, and everything. But what I started realizing is I really need to talk to people that have had these kind of experiences. I mean, but I'm literally out there on the street meeting like homeless type of people, because I started going to sharing groups for people that had had life-threatening illnesses. 99% lost all their money, and their possessions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So not so much like the spiritual side of these types of support groups, more just like
just dealing
3D
with the
world.
Yes,
trauma.
and the trauma, and and you've got these diseases and issues now, and how do you cope? Well, here's the interesting thing. I started seeing living angels in these groups. These are not just people that the rest of the world sees as some homeless mess with this, I saw living angels. I met living angels.
So you're saying these are like, to me, if I was in that group with you and the person sitting next to me could actually be an angel, and I would just go like, oh, this is another person who's been through trauma, but it's really an angel supporting that support group?
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
I didn't even know that.
And so I'll tell this story. I was in this sharing group like that. and there was like 14 people. And this guy shows up, never seen him before. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He came here from like Canada or something. And he, I felt this immediate connection. He's talking to the group. And as he's talking to the group, I feel him reading me. And so I thought in my mind back to him, I said, are you reading me? And as he's talking to the group, he's looking at me and he goes like this. And it blew my mind because it's like, you know, we're in another dimension here. Everyone else thinks they're in 3D, but we have a lot more going on, right? And so I knew I had to meet this guy.
Yeah. What was that word PMH Atwater called that? The
Edge walking.
Edge walking. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I had to meet this guy. Later, I'll briefly say, so to the world, this looks like a homeless black guy with ashy skin, like that you would see walking downtown somewhere. And to me, I'm like, okay, well, he's more than an angel. So what's more than an angel but not God? So I'm like, Son of God? Is this Jesus? Like, who is this? And so after that thing, we start talking. We start walking around Honolulu, which is funny because one of the things I've always said to people is, you know, you see people talking to themselves, houseless people with mental illness, and it's like, how do you know they're not really talking to somebody? And I've also thought many times, like, could I have been talking to somebody? And I'm one of those people. But I pinched the guy several times to make sure it's real. And anyway, so he starts telling me things that only me and God knows, you know. And he's like, you have to tell your story. And he doesn't know my story. And he's like, and you're going to be leading big groups and you're going to be talking to all these people. And the weird thing is the more he said, I knew he was right, but it scared me because I'm like the most reluctant messenger. I was happy in my marketing and finance and real estate world. I don't want to go be talking about spiritual stuff. But everything he said was so, it was amazing. And so I spent 2 years with people like that.
Wow.
Did you have a question, Karen?
No, I'm just loving listening to your story, Shaun. That's incredible. I loved hearing about the earth angels and how often these, you know, mentally deranged or challenged people or homeless people can be these masters in disguise. Because, you know, Kristin and I are big fans of Garnet. In fact, Kristin found me on the first show I had Garnet Schulhauser on. That's how she found me on. So there's a connection there between Garnet, Kristin, and I. And his spirit guide that's taken him across the cosmos and showed him a million different things, and he's put it down in his books, always shows up as a homeless man every time. Yeah. I said to Garnet 10 years after first having a conversation, I said, does Albert, which is his spirit guide, does Albert still show up as a homeless man? He said, every time. Yep. He shows up as a smelly, dirty, unwashed homeless man. That's the look that he appears to Garnet. It's so interesting.
Yeah, so Garnet even explains his smell, like, and everything. Yeah. And I just want to say, Shaun, that with you doing this edge walking and you being in these sharing groups at the time, not what you're doing now, but in those sharing groups at the time, and you've seen these earth angels in there, is that what you've become? You're an earth angel? Like if I was sitting there and I had more gifts like you and I could look and go, he's not like everybody else. You know, bringing that unconditional love and compassion and forgiveness that you were taught.
Well, I'm definitely changed from who I was. And um, forever changed. And guys like that guy are many of my closest friends.
Wow.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
I've gone to Thanksgiving down, you know how like communities, you know, have that Thanksgiving at the, you know, for the homeless and stuff.
Yeah.
I've gone and had Thanksgiving with these guys and had it be so much more wonderful than if I was at home or, you know, and every single one of them, like they're big teachers. And I remember one of the things I would say to my sisters, these guys, they don't know my degrees. They don't know all my houses and the money, all the stuff I used to have. They just know me and they love me without all that stuff. And that was huge for me because, you know, it's sad and cool at the same time, because it's sad because I really believed, like a majority of the world, that we need all these things for people to care about us. And then to see that with these guys, it's just the companionship and it's nothing about any of that. And so they really inspired me to the point where if somebody talks about houseless people in my presence, if you remember Alien, the movie, sometimes something will come out of me like that just wants to, like, because it's like, how can you even say that? You know, I was in a Course in Miracles group with this lady, and I was shocked that this happened, but she made a comment about houseless people forgetting who they are. And I just literally said something to the effect of, no, I think you've forgotten who you are to actually judge them when you know nothing about them. Yeah. And so anyway, at some point, I'm having all these amazing experiences. Literally, my mother's doing amazing stuff. We're talking like 2 years of like miracles and meeting living angels, and then just having these incredible spiritual connections and people giving me blessings everywhere out of the blue. I'll be like on a handy van, and this one lady, she gets up and she's raising her things and giving me blessings, and it was just wild. But at some point I realized I need to talk to other people that have had these experiences, because you go to a spiritual discussion group like A Course in Miracles, and most people there, and A Course in Miracles is an amazing way to have an awakening. But most people there are wanting to have an awakening. They haven't yet. So they don't understand what it's like when you've had some sort of an awakening. So that's when I started realizing I need to talk with other people like me. And of course, you know, it's not very easy to find other people that talk to dead people and angels and other entities all the time. But when I started realizing, I had these friends from Boston that would go to the Buddhist temple with me sometimes, and I'd take them to the Hare Krishna, the kirtan. And the wife said to me one day, she's like, you actually just tell normal people this stuff? And that's when I realized, oh, yeah, I probably need to be talking with other experiencers more. So that's how I started my little sharing group. And it was literally a self-centered thing when I started it. I just wanted to talk with other people that had had these same experiences. And now it's grown to be like the biggest, you know, like huge. We have members from all over the world. And what I found is that we're healing together, you know, and so people will come and they share their experiences in a safe place where they're told, you know, they're not crazy. Or, you know, and then I get people, they'll approach me like there's actually this guy on X right now, amazingly intelligent, mathematical, geometric stuff. And somehow he saw me there he started sending me messages, and he's like, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, blah, 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 and tells me all this stuff. And I'm like, no, you're not crazy at all. This is normal. And it feels like crazy because people, as you guys know, we go to these other realms and we have all this help from the other side that is here to help us wake up. And it seems like they always choose the meek. I don't know if there's that Bible saying, the meek shall inherit the world. It's always those of us that are like reluctant or like, more, not all self-assured, you know what I mean? That get these lessons. And so
yeah, I've noticed that one of the things that I really enjoyed about working with the international IANs and their conference, and just for clarification, I myself have not had an NDE at all. I just live a very intuitive life, and I have worked really hard at that. But I love working behind the scenes. My skills are like in working in conferences and stuff like that, to be able to facilitate places for all of us that are just looking for safety. I mean, I started with Karen many years ago and her Inner Sanctum group, and we were just online talking to each other because it was safe. And, I told them, I'm like, well, I'm thinking about coming out of the spiritual closet myself, and everybody, because that was a term we used in this little group, and everybody joked, wait, you're not out? And I go, oh, no. Only you guys know, and a couple really close friends. So yeah, what ended up getting you to actually start these groups? Like, what was that? What got you there? How did you find IANs? Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I just want to interject here. You said that you started the group because you just wanted to have those conversations, just sharing. That's exactly what I did too. I read the book Conversation with God. I think I was in my 30s or early 40s. And I just wanted to have conversations with people that had read that book. And I started a group, and there was just me and a girlfriend that started, just the two of us that had read the book. And then another one joined, and another one joined, and a few other people joined. And then a guy called Paul, who's since left his body, said, there are other groups. This is pre-internet. There are other groups out there that have these conversations. And I said, I did not know. Like, before the internet, how did we find each other? But I also wanted to say to you too, I wanted to mention Hani. Nadi Hana. Nadi Hana was a girl I had on the show a couple of years ago who since left her body. And, one of the things that you said, Shaun, is we all hear it. It's like, you might think I'm crazy. The guy that reached out to your next, don't think I'm crazy. Like, we all say this. And Nadi said to me, don't use the word crazy, use the word extraordinary. Like, you might think I'm extraordinary. I just love that. So I just want to bring her message back. Instead of saying, you might think I'm crazy, you might think I'm extraordinary, but I have this experience. Like, instead of saying we're crazy or woo-woo, we're extraordinary. I just love that. But yeah, how did you find IANs? That's a great question, Kristin.
Well, yeah. And by the way, actually, when I post for my groups, it actually does say if you've had an extraordinary circumstance experience. And so the funny thing is, it's just that's something that when people first come for the first time, they will say, and then they'll realize, and that's the other thing. No, the crazy world is out there. The people that aren't experiencing and seeing all this stuff, that's the crazy world.
Yeah, the person working 9 to 5 in a job that they hate, struggling to pay the bills, stressing about everything, fighting with everyone. That's the crazy world, right?
Yes, and ignoring all the signs that are there to help them get out of that crazy life.
Right.
Because we're all supported. We all have the signs. We all have a team. And it's just so many people just ignore it. And that's why, like, when people say, like, Kristin, when you said I didn't have an NDE, it's like, well, good for you, because some of us need to just be whacked upside the head harder to listen.
Sledgehammer.
So yeah, another common phrase. I was whacked over the head with the spiritual 2x4.
Right.
And I will say I have several close friends that have had near-death experiences, and honestly, like I don't want to necessarily have to go through that to be able to open up and be, you know, intentional and conscious and connected and all of that, because you know, it's a hard life after. I mean, it's affected your health forever, and yet you still smile, Shaun, and you still serve, and it's so beautiful, all that you do and carry on and continue to open these groups for everybody, because I learned so much just from that type of sharing. You know, there's another NDEer that's been in the chat here, Claudia Edge, and Shaun, I don't know.
Claudia, yes,
yeah,
I know Claudia.
She's been in here a little bit, and
hi, Claudia.
Yeah,
we were actually lived in the similar area in Lehigh, and we also went to the same high school, Olympus.
Oh wow!
Yeah. But I just think that the work that you do is incredible. Yeah. So you started these groups, and you run some of the biggest membership online. And what else?
Yeah. So, you know, I literally started the group because I wanted to talk to other people that had had these experiences. And, you know, and I met this lady that she'd had an NDE. She was a nurse. And then she started doing channeling. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, these are like the people. And so I started getting to know some of these people. So we just had a little in-person at a Unity church here. And what was funny is I was still like afraid to tell my story. I couldn't even tell it without crying. So I didn't tell my story probably until like the third or the fourth week. And so I found, you know, IONS. I thought, oh, they know what they're doing. I don't know how to run a group or anything like that. And so it was kind of funny because the IONS group leader that they had approved that was leading this group had not had an NDE, didn't know much about him. She was into Swedenborg. And one of the many things about my experience that I've learned, which I thought was weird at first, is so there's lots of portals and so forth. You guys know about portals, and we have lots of portals here in Hawaii. Where my mom appeared to me was a portal. The reason that I was feeling that ascension sickness is because my vibrations were being raised. She's coming down so that we could meet. And so we have lots of portals in Hawaii, and there's portals all over, you know, Sedona, different, you know, Mount Shasta, but Hawaii is full of them. And so at this, it used to be a Nordstrom, and then it became a Target upstairs and a Planet Fitness downstairs. And so after, because I had to go through 2 years of rehab, physical therapy, and so I would go there and do stuff. And the most amazing spiritual experiences, people that had died like 30 years ago that I'd forgotten about came through, and different spiritual teachers. And then upstairs in Target, my mom in this one section is really powerful. And so COVID started, and you know, they're having runs on everything. And of course we're in Hawaii, so they have runs anyway. So I was talking to a sister on the phone and telling her something amazing my mom had done. And I was walking by the toilet paper towel aisle, looked down, all gone. No toilet paper, no paper towels. I went and I walked around the block or around the aisle, came back the other side, and there is a 4-pack of my brand of toilet paper sitting right there. And
thanks, Mom.
Right. So she did. I mean, this stuff, one of these days, I mean, I will do a whole talk on just all the amazing stuff that she's done, because it all teaches me. Everything she's done is to teach me lessons. So anyway, but what was interesting is then this friend of mine, when it was in Nordstrom, him and I were there at another time, and he pointed over to where that area is, where my mom's really strong and does all kinds of stuff. And he says, that's where my office was. And there was all kinds of dark energy there. And they were always like harassing me and causing me all this like heartache. And I thought, wow, this is crazy. So where my mom is doing all these amazing things for me, this guy is experiencing dark entities. Why is that?
We've only got 5 minutes left of the show. There's so much more to say, but I was fascinated when you talked about your mother being so psychic and so open, and also having mental issues. And she says to you on the other side, after she's passed over, that what we call demons, Kristin and I have discussed this on Elevate. We call them thought forms or vibrational spheres, like thought attract thought. And so every thought that's ever been think still exists, and they attract and group through law of attraction, and they create these spheres of energy or thought forms. And if you're a vibrational match to that thought form, it can plug into you and you plug into it. And it feels like you're being controlled by demons. So it was interesting that she spoke about that. That was fascinating. Even after she finished her physical experience, she was still speaking to you about being overwhelmed by this. I don't know, you called them demons, but by these.
Yeah. And in Hawaiian Huna, they call them malu.
Right.
And all that means is anytime we're unconscious.
Right.
Whenever we go unconscious, or when we're not, like if you really desire something a lot, anything that is going to make you go unconscious invites malu in, which then you end up doing things you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah. So when you say unconscious, Shaun, like unconscious of how you're generating energy or flowing your energy, like you're in your drama, you're in your craze. Byron Katie calls your insanity. When you believe your stressful thoughts, you are in your insanity, she calls it. And that's what you're saying, your unconscious mind. You're not conscious of what you're doing with your thinking.
Exactly. And that's when we invite that malu in. Yeah. And
we've run out of time. I just want to show what Diane is saying here. There's been some lovely comments. We hadn't have time to speak them all out for people listening on radio. But Diane,
we don't need these ones. Go to the other one.
What a great conversation, Shaun. Kristin is so natural on camera. Looking forward to her podcast.
Yeah, she's doing great.
She's doing great. And she said, Karen's a perfect mentor. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, darling one.
And I saw Leanne Lucas was there. She comes to a lot of our groups.
Yeah.
Hey, Leanne. Yes, we do.
We need a second episode.
So, Shaun, I was going to ask too, like I took notes and everything, and then had little previous notes, but like you don't have a book or anything out there. And with all these different experiences and so much you could teach, would your book be like A Course in Miracles? Like how many books is
I think at least 2 or 3 books, because one book is my experiences, but then another one is what I've learned from my mother and these other entities and angels on the other side, because they're the ones. I just want to say this. Nobody is alone. Everybody, I've met so many people. They're like, I don't have anybody. That's not true. Everybody has somebody. And if it wasn't for my team, which I call the gang, when I first met Paul Seelig, because he lives on Maui and, he's got
he calls them the guides. Yeah.
And I'm the gang. And I'm like, my gang says the same thing as your guides. Which
Karen calls the mob.
The mob, I call them the mob. I reverently call them. So we've run out of time. So let's tell people where they can find you. If there's anyone that you know that's in IANS, but you have Zoom groups too. If people want to join the Zoom groups.
Yeah, so you can actually just ShaunLether.com. And if you go there, there's going to be a list of all my links to Hawaiian IANS, our speaker events, the sharing groups. We're going to have a sharing group next Tuesday, the 20th. So you can come and share whatever personal spiritual experiences, and it doesn't matter how crazy you might think it'll be. I will guarantee you that that's the other thing that I find kind of cool is all these experiences I've had, I now understand. Somebody else can tell me something that they think's insane, and I won't think it's insane because I've experienced it.
You'll think it's extraordinary. It's not insane. It's extraordinary.
Exactly.
So you have these sharing groups. What time do you have the sharing groups?
Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, it's every third Tuesday, and it's at 6 p.m. Hawaii time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. And
so 6 Pacific, 7 Central.
Thank you, Leanne.
8
7 Mountain,
8
and 9
Central, and
Eastern.
9 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah. And
so
we have speaker events on the 1st, and we also do healing.
That also works for Australia too, because that's in the morning for us. It's a very decent time
that's why I do that. We have lots of Australians and New Zealanders that come.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So ShaunLether.com. Shaun is spelled, for people on radio, Shaun is SHAUN, Lether, LETHER.com, and you can find out more there. You can find out about. We've run out of time. Kristin, you're a superstar. You did such a great job.
Yeah, this has been so much fun.
Thank you so much for everybody's participation. It's really fun.
Yeah. Well, Kristin and I get on Elevate most weeks and yak, we just chat away. But I've never seen her do this interview. I don't think you've ever seen yourself do the interview. I bet you had a million questions you didn't ask.
Sort of, but I let them lead in.
Yeah.
So
yeah. We should do it again, and we can do more questions. And then, really, what I like to talk about the most is just all the help we have from the other side.
Yeah.
Angels, coming in bodies,
and developing our. People call them spiritual gifts, but psychic abilities, I call them ability. But we actually run out of time. Big love to all of you. And for people that are listening on radio, I'd love you to come and subscribe to ATP Media, Karen Swain, Blissful Beings. You'll see it on YouTube. I'd love you to subscribe. We're speaking to over 1 million people through the syndicated radio networks. They're listening through different platforms on radio. I'd love you to come across and subscribe and leave a comment. Let us know what you think. The comments are always appreciated. Big love to all of you. Bye for now.
Aloha. Thank you both. Wonderful time.